Well, welcome everybody to our Ask the Expert series. I'm so excited. Usually it's once a month, sometimes more, sometimes less. We have an expert come in to talk about a specific topic, and Allison Puryear, she is an expert in many different areas. So we may be traveling the topics. But Allison, welcome to the Ask the Expert series.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. Well, let me tell you guys a little bit about Allison, just so you know a little bit about her background, how we know each other, what she does. So for one, she is just a fun person in general. As you can see by her glasses,
They're not shy. They're not shy.
No,
glasses.
she's not shy. We get along rather well. So I met Allison a number of years ago. I think it was when you reached out for consulting, and now you've just like in so many different ways.
This is the dog.
Allison, she has a membership community called the Abundance Party, and it's fun, it's awesome, it's a great community. But I remember I interviewed Allison, and what really struck me was an approach that she took to networking when she was in a new area, which I think will be a good place for us to start, where she did 40 networking meetings in 40 days, which...
It was 90 and 90, actually.
That is...
Yeah,
for some reason that didn't sound right. I should have done my research again. 90 in 90 days, even bigger and better. Take us back to that. I know you've shared this story a bunch of times, but it's so freaking impressive.
Well, thanks. Well, I want to throw a lot of qualifiers out there. I'm extroverted, I'm outgoing, and I was in a brand new city where I didn't know anybody. So I was lonely. So I don't know that I would recommend 90 and 90. And that's for anybody who just walked in, like meeting 90 people for networking in 90 days. I don't know that I would recommend that for the vast majority of people. But if you happen to be an outgoing extrovert with a lot of time on your hands and you like meeting people, then you can follow that journey. But in doing that, I learned a lot about what was working with networking and what wasn't, and figured out how to make it a lot less awkward than it initially seemed. And actually ended up meeting most of my friends that way. I ended up basically with like a treasure trove of therapist friends, which is fantastic. And that's when I first moved to Seattle from Georgia. And then several years later, we moved to Asheville, North Carolina from Seattle, and just kind of like did it all with a toddler in tow. So not as many people, because a toddler does not allow for that. but enough that it was, networking has continued to be the thing that has built my practice. I would say the fastest with quotation marks, because you're planting a lot of seeds, but in terms of longevity, the places that I tend to get referrals are the places that are the networking dates that I went on those first few months of starting my practice.
Yeah. Well, what were some of your big takeaways from that? And maybe even what have you learned since then that would help people with networking?
Yeah. So I think when we think of networking, we think of it as like this weird schmoozy thing where you go to a big networking event and you like take a bunch of cards and you
make it rain with the cards.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's actually been very not effective for me in terms of networking. Partly because they always feel a little awkward, and partly because, it's just not an opportunity to connect one-on-one. And that's something that we are all pretty great at, is connecting one-on-one. Otherwise, we probably would be in a different profession. So I feel like we're already suited to like a one-on-one coffee date or a swing by the office or whatever for networking.
So before you go on to your point, I just have to tell you a story about a super awkward thing that happened at one of those. So I went to this like young professionals training thing, and this guy was teaching about networking, and he wanted us all to, rather than say like, "Hi, I'm Joe, I'm a business consultant," and to start with what your job role was, and then say your name. So we had to introduce ourselves as business consultant Joe Sanok. It was like the weirdest thing, and it was like that. It just took the sliminess to a whole new level.
I did, yeah, and like the weird hierarchy of like what your title might be, and you might not have control over that if you're an employee. Yeah, ugh, I don't like that. Yeah, and can you imagine going up to meet somebody for coffee and being like, "Therapist Allison Puryear"? Like it just sounds so cheesy. So part of what I realized is that if I went in kind of guns blazing about my practice and who I treat and how I do things, I mean, anybody's going to be a little bit turned off, like, "Oh, welcome to the Allison show. This is fun." So instead, what I always did is just kind of got to know the person as a human being. So I always think about it in Seattle because I met so many people, and sitting down with them and getting to know them, like what they like to do, how long they've been living there, some of the kind of small talky things, but because we're one-on-one and we have usually an hour to spend together, we can go a little bit deeper. I learned all sorts of really cool things I wouldn't have known about, just about what was in the area and about random things like whether it's mountain biking, whether it's sewing, just the things that people are into. It's really fun to be able to hear about something somebody's passionate about outside of work. And so I made it kind of my mission to get to know people as human beings and then ask them about their practice. And so that gave me more context for who they were. It also allowed me to see the things that, like, what their values were. Instead of us going into this conversation all about business and work and like feeling like a first date where you have to like put yourself off as this amazing person. Instead, I could get them engaged in the things they actually like cared about outside of work. And then
I imagine that also just made your life more rich, because it's like, if you thought, I want a mountain bike, but I haven't mountain biked, well, now I know 2 or 3 people that do that. Or if I want to knit a scarf, oh, Janet's really good at that. And like, your life is just better, even if your business, isn't, I mean, which it sounds like it definitely helped, but I think it brings the humanity into business rather than just saying, our goal for this meeting is to start referring to each other. Let's jump into that. It's just like, let's enjoy each other as people. And then like naturally you're going to want to, refer to each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you get to kind of get a sense when you're having a conversation with somebody that's kind of more real and less presentation based, you get a sense of what they would be like in session. You get a sense of the kind of questions that they ask you when, if they ask you any questions, or if it is kind of like, oh, you're going to let me be on this stage this whole time, let's do it. Which doesn't mean I wouldn't refer to them, because if later I asked them about their practice and I saw that passion and I heard the like fervor of how much they love their theoretical orientation or the way they love to help people change their lives, like that's really exciting and fun to get on board with. But I could also get a sense of like, oh, this client I have on the phone that's, I'm full, so they're not a great fit for me. Or they're not a great fit for me. Who do I know that would be a good fit for them as they're presenting? Not just for the way that, the way they're describing their problem and then this person's niche, but like the personality fit I had such a better feel for than I would have otherwise.
Yeah. So for people like you and I that just love people, like, we're hosting this Friend Fest thing for my 40th birthday. And I bought silent disco headphones because I just want to own them. And it's like, come, we're having a campfire, silent disco. Like, networking, it might be easier for us than maybe someone that's, a little more introverted or very introverted, or someone that's super sensitive to coming across as slimy. For those people, what are some first steps and things to consider as they kind of dive into networking a little bit more?
Yeah. Well, and I would say this is also for people who love people, because we can be a little bit overwhelming, and it's good for us to kind of have some steps to follow so that we're not just like messily excited about people. Yeah. So, I would say, like, let's go all the way back to, let's say you are opening your practice, or you're working to build your practice. I'm guessing everybody here is in that phase. So they go into maybe Psychology Today, or asking friends who are also clinicians, and say, who do you refer to? If it's a friend, who do you refer to? Like, who should I get to know? Because you're not just looking for people to refer to you. You're also looking for people to refer potential clients to. So I might go through Psychology Today, make a list of people that look like folks who could be potential referral folks. So like, I specialize in eating disorders. So I'm going to look at all the other eating disorder specialists. I'm going to look at people who specialize in anxiety. I'm going to go outside of Psychology Today and also look at the dietitians who work with eating disorders in the area, the OBGYNs, the fertility clinics, the PCPs. So I'm going to make a big, long list. Now, I'm a fan for all of us, whether you're like ready to take on a challenge or feeling a little bit skittish about it, just start easy. Like, we don't need to be heroes. Start easy. If there's a colleague that you had a great relationship with that you've lost touch with, who may be a great referral source, go there first. So have your long list. I would say email. If you're introverted, email 5 people. If you're extroverted, email 10 per week. I know that sounds like, holy cow, no thank you. But most of them aren't going to get back to you. And that's not personal. It's easy to take that personally if you're sending out one email at a time and you're waiting. It's like waiting for the phone to ring in any in any area of your life. It's awful. But if you email 5 people, you might get 1 or 2 responses, maybe 3 if you're really like in a town with people who are hopping and ready to network. So email 5, hear back from maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3, schedule some coffee dates. What I did in Seattle, because I was new to town and I had nothing but time and loneliness, I was like, I'll come to you. Like, where's good? Because I was still trying to learn the city. So I would go to them. I got to learn. I'm really, really bad spatially, but I knew how to get around Seattle better than my husband, who like can go somewhere once and 10 years later find it again. So it really helped me get to know the area, get to know the great restaurants, the great coffee shops, all of that. So I would go to them. If that's not a situation that works for you, you can just say, like now when people want to network, I'm like, let's go to Liberty House Coffee because it's 2 blocks away and it's just super easy and quick and I don't have to worry about finding parking. So that, depending on where you're at in terms of time and energy, and if you're still like, if you're skittish about it and you would prefer to not do a ton of networking, just make it quick and easy for you. Put it exactly where you want it. So meet them. When you're sitting down with them, like I was saying earlier, just ask them about themselves. Get to know them as people, then ask them about their practice. Typically, if you ask them about their practice, they're going to ask you about your practice. Cody, come here, buddy. Senile dog again. Poor guy. So if they ask you about your practice, one thing I'm going to recommend is even before, like as you're either walking to your networking place or you're in your car before you walk in, I want you to really connect with why you do what you do. I want you to think about your amazing clients. I want you to think about the way that they work hard and you help them change their lives. I want you to get really grounded in why you love what you do. We all have days with clients that aren't amazing, and it can be easy to get swept up in like the hardness of our job because it is hard. But if you can go into a networking meeting and you can talk about who you work with and how, in a way that has you filled up and excited about it, that's contagious. And people want to refer to people who are excited about what they do and who really love who they're working with and how they're doing it. So yeah. And then you basically just have another conversation with another human being, which we're all good at. And then the thing that most people don't do that makes a huge difference is follow up. So I would say maybe a month later, if it's somebody you had a nice, easy connection with, follow up. If it was stilted and awkward, and I have a few stories, not a ton, but a few stories where I was like, get me out of here. Then you don't need to follow up. Like, don't make life harder on you. There are plenty of other people to network with. But if it was a nice, easy connection, if you enjoyed your time with them, then you can just send them an email like a month out and say, hey, I really loved meeting last week or last month. I've been thinking about this thing you said, X, Y, or Z, or, oh, this article I just saw on my Facebook feed reminded me of you, so I tagged you, or whatever. But find some way to reconnect with them a little bit later so that you stay on each other's radar. Because it's really easy to, if you're doing a lot of networking, to start getting people kind of mixed up a little bit. So I also, like, I'm a spreadsheet girl. I love a spreadsheet. So I have like a spreadsheet of like their name, where their office is, what their niche is, how to get in touch with them. And then anything that I learned that kind of sparks my memory of them after networking with them. So maybe like, oh, they know so-and-so, this person I knew back from another state, or super passionate about, I keep going back to mountain biking because it's too cold to do it here. Super passionate about mountain biking, or, things like that. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that idea of the spreadsheet and just kind of like keeping track of it too. Because I remember there was a lady who reached out to me. She was new to Traverse City, and I think her name was Betsy, but like we got coffee and she was so passionate about helping the LGBTQ community and like would be the person I would refer to. I don't remember who she is. And that was like 2 years ago. I would have to go back and search through my email and try to figure it out. And that whole idea that like, it's not that other person's responsibility for you to stay on their mental map. And to just follow up here and there. I even think about this one lady, Caroline, who moved to town that she was friends with my little sister and, you know, 8 years younger than me. She moved back and she's like, I'd love to get coffee. And so we got coffee and then she invited us over to her house. And like now we hang out all the time and, you know, we're genuine friends. And so I think that just that natural side of it, that how you emphasize that we have these skills, like we go from not knowing to someone to them crying on our couch in like 5 minutes, you know, like we can do it.
And I'll say there is this phenomenon I've experienced and I've had other people tell me about where like two therapists, so we have that energy, right, where people will cry on our couch. So sometimes like I've had therapists disclose things where I was like, whoa, okay. Like, I mean, I can handle that disclosure. I just was not expecting it in this context. So I think being really thoughtful about how much you disclose, just in terms of, you know, you're with somebody that you might be really getting along with and might feel really safe because we've got that energy, right? But, you know, it's not necessarily therapy.
Right.
So.
We have a couple of questions coming in that I think that we'll just address kind of as we go.
Awesome.
So one is, so should you find someone in your niche to see who they get referrals from, or just the people that are complementary to your niche?
So definitely network with the people in your niche. I say the Southern version.
I know. I used to say it too, and then so many people kept saying niche that I was like, oh, I guess I'll switch.
You got swayed.
I got swayed. But the whole niche, the riches are in the niches. Like
I know.
The niches are in the riches. Like that.
It doesn't work as well. Yeah.
No.
So definitely network with the people who are in your niche, because many of us are full. And I'm like, I've been referring out to so many people for so many years. Like all the people I refer to get full, stay full. So I need like fresh blood to refer to because I also stay full. So making sure that you're not writing them off simply because you're afraid they're competition or that they'll view you as competition, that there are plenty of clients for all of us, for better or for worse. None of us...
and more coming every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's as long as you're getting yourself out there and people can find you, you will be full. I would also do like the auxiliary folks. Like for me, it's dietitians. If you work in perinatal mental health, it might be, you know, midwives and OBs. So thinking about those people, for many of us, it's psychiatrists. Holy smokes, you guys, they refer out like crazy. The ones that really value therapy. So my husband has a psychiatric practice and he refers out several times a day. So he's always eager and always asking me like, who's good with this? And I would prefer for them to go network with him so he doesn't send me that text a few times a day. So reaching out.
Well, and I think that to drill into that a little bit, I think with medical clinics, there's usually oftentimes there's like a referral coordinator.
Yes.
And so like a nurse practitioner or a social worker. And so if you can, like one kind of hack that it's a little gray hat is to just call and say, can I talk to the referral coordinator? I have a question about referrals. Or, you know, if it's your own, you know, doctor, to just say, I need to talk to the person that refers. They're the ones that oftentimes it's like, you know, find this person a counselor and they've got their list from, you know, 1991. And
yeah, before anybody had a website, or they go on Psychology Today, where like my beef is people can check all the boxes and you can say that you treat everything, but I promise you nobody's good at everything. And so as an eating disorder provider, I get a lot of folks who are like, yeah, I found this person on Psychology Today. And then she told me all these things that are contraindicated to like me actually getting better. So yeah.
Like just yesterday, I was talking to a consulting client and he was saying how he's really good at teaching kind of men and women how to have boundaries. But then we kind of went into it and said, like, what is it about that? That seems like an action. Like, what's before that? And he figured out that really helps people find their voice. And any of you that were in the What's Working yesterday, I talked a little bit about this. And so what we figured out for him to get more clients is he's going to reach out to different business women's groups that are doing meetups. So he went on meetup.com. He's in a very large city. And there's like 30 meetups coming up, and just reaching out to the organizer and saying, I'd love to talk for half an hour about how to find your voice and how to set boundaries. And it's like, he's then actually contributing to helping these groups that are already meeting. And they want to learn this stuff. And so I think that you never know where those networking connections are going to lead to that sort of kind of public speaking as well.
Right. Right.
So we have another question that says, what would be in that email, the follow-up email? Like, what's just an example of what would be in that email?
Yeah. So I have a template that I can get to you, Joe, if you want to share it with them. But it's short because I've gotten really long networking emails that were literally like you're scrolling and it's still paragraphs. And I've gotten some that include like a CV or a resume, and like, you don't need to apply for a job with the person you're trying to network with, right? Like, you're just trying to meet them as another human being who is an absolute equal. So you don't have to overly explain yourself. So I usually just say, hi, so-and-so. Often, like, we have this in common, and it could be a person, it could be a niche, it could be a, part of the city or a neighborhood. It could be anything. Or I've heard, some of my clients have mentioned your so-and-so group that they've really appreciated. I'd love to get together and hear more about your practice. Are there some days in the next couple weeks that would work for you? And it's just really short and simple, really easy. So, and that way you don't have to like labor over it, because I think that's another thing. There are many steps where people don't reach out for networking. And that's one of the main ones, is that initial kind of cold email. And I prefer cold emails to cold calls, just because, I don't know.
You're not interrupting them then.
Yeah.
Another thing that I've done is I've reached out to people and said, I like to refer to people who I've met and, whose offices I've seen. So I'd love to bring coffee to your office. So then they don't have to go anywhere too. And that ends up being a little bit more of like business. They're less probably in like the coffee mode. But I remember I reached out to a naturopath, and she also did acupuncture, and I offered to bring kombucha rather than coffee, just because, she's a naturopath.
Right.
And we were looking at each other and it was like, how do I know you? And we realized we had both been at this family jam together where a bunch of people just brought instruments and jammed like 2 months earlier. And then it was like we were off and running. And so you never know when those connections are going to kind of come together.
Absolutely.
What about the follow-up email? So you hit on the first email, like, the month later, just sharing a resource, or like, should that just be kind of a short follow-up too?
Yeah, totally short. And it would just make it based upon like your conversation, so that it's not necessarily a templated thing you would send to everyone, but something that feels really specific and lands for them. So it could be, and it doesn't even have to be an email. It could be, sharing something on their Facebook page that reminded you of them or something like that. Or it's just something to kind of get in their orbit so that you stay top of mind. And
I think it's so cool when someone like says, oh, this book really like helped me. And then if you read that book and say, oh, that was amazing, I loved chapter 7 when they talked about this. It's like what they actually contributed to my life. And if they feel that contribution, then that helps them feel like, oh, wow, like Joe actually took some action from what we talked about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We have another question about, do you recommend just walking into a medical professional's office just to say hi and drop off a snack tray with your business cards taped to the container? Or do you have a different idea in regards to medical offices?
So I found that for my consulting clients, it depends on how big the city is and how big the practice is and that kind of thing. I'm here again with like, don't be a hero. It's really intimidating to walk into an unknown doctor's office for most of us. Some of you may be a lot more comfortable with it than I am. I'm not. But I start with the doctors my family sees. So, if I've taken my kid for a well child check at the pediatrician, I'm talking to the pediatrician about my work. Not to make it all about my work, but just like, where are you currently sending folks with eating disorders? Like, are you familiar with family-based treatment for eating disorders? It has this amazing efficacy. I can send you an article, that kind of stuff. My own doctor, like the doctor my husband and I both see, send a ton of people to both of us because they know us. Like, they've known us for years. They delivered one of my babies, that kind of thing. So kind of developing relationships with the people you already kind of have relationships with makes it a lot easier. And usually if you can get in with just one medical practice, they will send you a lot of people if you're one of their go-tos.
Absolutely.
They see 1 billion people a day. I think that's a fact.
Yeah.
It's science.
Another question, what would be your networking suggestions for my situation? My niche is helping women know and own their worth and also helping couples reconnect. I'm thinking about reaching out to other therapists, OBGYNs, medical doctors who specialize in women's health. And outside of that, I'm falling short of other possible referrals. In terms of locations, I was thinking coffee shops, gyms, ...
Okay. So I think about, those sound like two different niches to me that I'm sure there's overlap. But I might do, like, if you're really committed to both of those, for couples, for sure, get with the individual therapists in the area. Like, I don't touch couples with a 10-foot pole. I am not good at it. I know that. And I refer to couples counselors constantly because for my clients, their eating disorder is wrecking everything in their life, including their relationship. And so getting some support individually and as a couple is really important. So for the couples, I'd also talk with people who treat kids, because sometimes kids are acting out because the family is having kind of a larger systemic issue that might be stemming from the marriage.
I think sometimes even like divorce attorneys, when they decide to stay together, I mean,
Right.
be like, oh, okay, we're not getting divorced, but you probably should go see so-and-so.
Right. Yeah. And same with mediators.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, like, keeping your list comprehensive, but starting easy. So if therapists are easiest, I mean, I find therapists to be easiest of all the other people that I could network with, except for maybe dietitians, because they feel like therapists to me. But there doesn't seem to be as much of a gatekeeper as there are at doctor's offices or an attorney's office. It just feels like easier entry. Yeah. So let's see.
I think if maybe pastors, if there's
Mhm.
a spiritual component to the practice.
Yeah. And what was the first niche? It's women using their voice. Is that right? Or did I use
Let's
that?
see, helping couples connect and helping women know and own their worth.
Know and own their worth. Yeah. Okay. So it might be talking to the junior league. Like, where are groups of women clustering, basically? I've had a lot of people reach out to yoga studios and things like that, or gyms. I've not seen a whole lot of return on investment with that time investment. There are a couple examples I can think of where people were able to do workshops or talks at yoga studios because their ideal client happens to go to yoga a few times a week or something like that. But usually forming a relationship with the owner of the studio or the teachers at the studio, so that after class, if somebody's talking through something that came up for them, they can give the referral. That seems to work better.
Mm-hmm. I would say also, and tell me what you think, Allison, that idea of helping women know and own their worth, I would want to know more about what that means, because that seems like it's pretty general, like depression or anxiety. Like, does that mean I help women that have been through trauma to like find their voice again after being sexually assaulted? Do I help women who are raised, in a strict evangelical background that aren't that anymore and like aren't sure where they fit? Are they, stay-at-home moms that are coming back into the workforce? I think I'd want to see her drill into that a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to make the networking easier.
Yeah. And that's an interesting piece, is like, the more refined our niche becomes, the easier all the marketing is. Like, it's almost like out there on a silver platter of here's what to do and how to find referral sources.
One question just came in. What do you think about leaving a rack card or something at jewelry stores for couples for premarital counseling?
That's a good question. I think leaving any sort of card doesn't tend to yield a lot of referrals in my experience. Developing a relationship, and now the jeweler is not going to want to do anything that's going to make the couples think that he doesn't think their relationship is just rock solid, right?
This engagement ring also gets this business card.
Right. You guys are cute and all, but I have some concerns.
Yeah.
So I think thinking about it from the perspective of the potential referral, of how does it put them in a great light? How does it help them with something? And that's kind of my argument. When you do talk to doctors' offices, you truly are helping them, because they have 15 minutes. They have 15 minutes with people. They often don't even get a lunch. And it gives them an opportunity to feel like, okay, in these 15 minutes, I could not solve this person's like lifelong experience of trauma, but I could help them find someone who did. So one thing I have had clients do is those big like marriage marts. I think of them as like the places, what are they? Come on, brain. You know, at like conference centers, and they have like the engagement ring places and the wedding ring places. And
Oh, like a wedding show kind of thing?
yeah,
Wedding
yeah.
expo?
Yeah, I've had people have booths there, and we were really careful with our language. So it wasn't like, in case your marriage sucks, but like start out on the right foot with um, like understanding how you guys work best together. I can't remember how we worded it, but it was really looking at like from a strengths-based perspective instead of a fear-based
For sure.
message.
The one time that I had leaving business cards in random places work is I got those little mini moo cards. So they're like a third of the size of a regular one. And I put really kind of like captivating things on one side, like are your kids angry? Or like, your marriage is not over. Or what else did I do? Like, there's hope for your family. So it looked cool. And that's all it said. And it just had my information on the other side of it. And I was at a local music festival, and I left a bunch in the outhouses. And then also, whenever I was at a bar, I would take the "Your Marriage Is Not Over" one and put it in the like Johnny on the stall thing. I got clients with the outhouse, like there's just, people were stuck in there anyway. So they, what's this? I'm going to read it. So worked in that situation. Not saying that's going to universally work though. We have another question about offering an alternative spirituality based on Buddhist thought. What would be some networking ideas for that?
So I'd want to know more about who the ideal client is for that.
Yeah. So Karen, if you feel up for it, do you mind turning your video on, and maybe we can drill into it a little bit more? If you're not in a place that you can do that, maybe you can just put it into the chat area. And then we'll come back to you to get some extra thought on that. So next question, this may be cheesy, but I have a friend who swears by the business advertising that you stick on the side of your car. Thoughts?
I think for me, first I'm curious if that person is a therapist.
That was my first thought too.
Right. No. Okay. Yeah. I don't think it would work for our particular market. Because like, if I'm like, oh, do I want longer eyelashes? Sure. That's a quick, easy
I need someone to take the wallpaper off of my kitchen. Sure.
Right. Yeah. Like that's, there's a lot less emotional investment. Whereas for therapy, our marketing is interesting, right? Because we can't come off as too markety, and most of us are under marketing. So I also want to say that, but I feel like that might cross the line into marketing land. Like getting a bench with your picture.
Better call Saul.
Yeah, right.
There's two therapists in town. One guy, he has Got Hope Counseling, and it's like on the back of his truck next to his Trump stickers. And then there's this other guy who has these yellow signs that say need an intervention, and it's like alcohol and drug interventions, like 24/7. And I know both those people, and like they fit what you probably think they're like. And so I feel like it definitely falls into that area. So yeah, let's see. So the Buddhist thought question. So people who are depressed and anxious would be the target market. And how would you network or market kind of an alternative spirituality based on Buddhist thought within that kind of practice?
So what I always think about is like, we're not marketing what we do, because our clients, for the most part, don't care how the sausage gets made. They just want to feel better. So you're really marketing their very specific pain. So with depression and anxiety, are these folks who have struggled lifelong with depression and anxiety? Maybe they have trauma experiences. Maybe they had an awful experience this year and it threw them into depression and anxiety. Is this a man or a woman, or somebody who's non-binary? Is this somebody who's 30 or somebody who's 60? Because the marketing for all those things is going to look so vastly different. So I'd get really clear about who you do your absolute best work with, and thinking through the people that really light you up when you see them on your schedule, and refining to one solitary imaginary person that maybe is like an amalgam of several of your clients that you really love working with. And that's going to help you get really clear on not just the specifics of your niche, but like, it's easier to say, what does this one person do on a Thursday night that might put them in contact with my marketing than what do all the people in my city who experience depression and anxiety feel, who may be open to this different modality.
I think from the networking standpoint, just thinking through who are people that are spiritual leaders that would be safe referral sources. So it's like, you know, the Unitarian Universalist Church or Unity Church, or, you know, are there different sanghas in town or meditation groups? And if there's not, maybe there's a chance for hosting some meetups on your own to just, you know, kind of develop some of that community around a different spirituality than what's predominant in your community.
Yeah.
Good question. All right. Let's see. We've also got, what's the typical price range for group therapy?
I always think about it, and this is a KDK May thing, but she talks about making twice your hourly rate if you have the number of people in group that you expect.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like math like that, instead of like, I don't know what quality, like, what are they getting out of it? Always feels a little nebulous, and also true, but
yeah, but it's like, if you're going to put in all the time to set up a group, make the group work, and you're like, you better get a better hourly. You might as well just do one counseling session if you don't.
Right.
So question, if you don't want to set up your own Facebook ads, is there someone you would recommend that they use?
Yes. Well, if you don't want to set up your own. So here's the hard thing. The person I trust more than anybody in the whole world with Facebook ads, her name is Amy Crane. She's at Social Lab Marketing. She has courses that she teaches on how to do it. I'm hearing you don't want to do it. And this is where it gets dicey. She will run your ads for you, but she is super, super expensive. So if you're willing to invest the money, then she's a great resource. Or if you're willing to learn, she's a great resource. She's also about to start training people to manage Facebook ads for other people. So it might be that once she does that, some of her students could run your Facebook ads for you. But she's just so good. She's raised her rates like we do too. So yeah.
Yeah, I found, I used to use some different people, but then I started getting these alerts in Facebook, like, why don't you meet with one of our ad specialists? And I like met with them for half an hour, got it all set up, and then like had a follow-up meeting 2 weeks later, and they looked at my analytics and it was all free. Like, they want to make money off of me. So
nice. That's awesome.
It was totally awesome. Like, and then I don't have to worry about, did I do it right? It's like, they're like, no, you just did that wrong.
Yeah. And so if you're doing that, you're going to want to monitor it yourself too, like, and make sure that you're getting your return on investment and your cost per click and everything. But generally, I'll also say that Facebook ads for like, hey, I've got open ongoing therapy sessions, don't tend to work as well as I have this group that starts at this particular time. Facebook ads tend to work really well with free stuff and with scarcity. So if you've got, if you're doing some content marketing and you have a great opt-in, that might be a great place to throw some ads at it. Or if you've got a group or a workshop coming up, but not necessarily just ongoing psychotherapy.
Yeah. I'm open to suggestions of breaking down the know and own your worth that we both posed. The common problems my clients deal with are feeling like they are too much or not enough for someone, and feeling that they don't know who they are anymore. Thoughts? I would start with, if you were to break down what it means to know your worth or to own your worth, like, what does that actually look like? Like, what outcomes would I feel if I'm owning my worth? So like situations, or like to really kind of get in the head of that. Cause I think that knowing your worth is so kind of up here. I want to know practically what's that look like.
Right. Is that like the anxiety of not knowing if a date is going to call back? Is that the feeling less than when you're with your group of friends, or feeling like you're not being invited to things, or feeling like people like you, but you don't understand why. So I get really specific. And one thing I've done in the past is kept a little notebook next to my therapy chair. And when my client leaves, if they said a phrase or even just a specific word that I know describes the experience of so many of my other clients so well, I'll just jot it down and I end up using it in copy.
Yeah. I think one exercise that I've seen that works well is to like think through your client the night before they call for therapy. And if they had a journal, and just like journal from their perspective, like, dear diary, I fucking hate my life. Like,
Right.
what would they say in that? And just kind of really try to get in their head, and then see what emerges from that.
Mm-hmm.
We have another question. If Facebook ads are not great for ongoing therapy client marketing, what would you suggest are some of the better approaches for marketing for an introverted therapist working in a small town?
It's a good question. Well, one of the benefits of small towns is that most people, and I'm in this situation here in Asheville, which is like a medium-sized city, but um, people are kind of late to the search engine optimization train. I mean, a lot of people here are kind of late to the having a website train. And so like search engine optimization is like next level. Google AdWords is next level. And so those might be some good ways to manage that without having to do a ton of in-person or emotionally draining work. Usually what I've found is that the work that's less emotionally draining, whether that's like my tech phobia or other people's not wanting to spend a ton of time with people because it drains them, is that it usually costs more money. So as long as you're willing to trade the energy for money, do it. Like there are a million different ways to build your practice. That's the great thing. And so and you can find many of them fun, or even fun to just pay somebody else to do it. As long as it's effective and you're getting return on investment. So yeah, that's what
there's a couple of resources in Teachable from some of our courses in there that might be helpful. There's one on how to set up your Google My Business. And so if you can be on that, that's when you Google something, there's a map and the little pin. Most, especially in a small town, I doubt there's hardly any reviews for any of the businesses. So if you just had colleagues review you, you're not going to want to ask your clients to review you on there. But colleagues or friends or family members to say, hey, I'm a friend of hers. She's an amazing person. She's so empathetic. That can go a long way. So I'd go through that course in Teachable. And then we also had an Ask the Expert, I want to say it was in November, with Jessica, where she was talking about meta descriptions and how she went from the bottom of, I think it was page 6 to the top of page 1 in just a couple weeks. And so she talks about internal linking, external linking, and meta descriptions, how to rank higher in Google. So those are resources that are in Teachable for you guys. So I would definitely jump on those if you want to do more of the online side of things. And there's screenshots and everything that'll walk you through it.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, and you guys may be able to help each other out. If you guys have like the kind of community where you know each other well, you can just be like, hey, let's round robin and write reviews for each other. Don't do them all on the same day because that looks super fishy. But like if you guys can take turns writing for one another, as like as a colleague, I would totally trust Christine to do, to work with these clients, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So Allison, you train a whole bunch of people on starting practices. Just kind of generally, what do you think people need to know during this phase from the $0 to $60,000 practice range?
If you find yourself sitting on the floor crying with snot in your mouth, like that's normal. Like very few of us bypass that stage. So if you're feeling like this is really hard sometimes, just on that roller coaster of like, I got this, this is awful, I'm going to just be amazing, I'm going to fail. Like if you're on that, join the club, man. Like we've all been there. And keep going, please keep going, because this is not rocket science. We can all have thriving, successful practices. You just have to figure out the marketing and what works for you. And what works for you might not work for somebody else in this group. And so it's figuring out what's a natural fit so you'll actually do it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Allison, for being on this Ask the Expert